everyone, this is Brittany here with your art fill of the week, and today I will be showing you another page, or actually 2 pages in my watercolor sketchbook. I decided it would be fun to try and make a peacock because of the colors. They just kind of spoke to me that day, and I wanted to try and paint it with watercolor. This first page is basically me trying out different angles of a peacock and looking at reference photos and just getting my hand used to drawing them, as well as getting the colors correct in painting them with my, I think it's called the Liang or something, watercolor set. I did a video earlier trying it out, so I'll link that and you can check that out if you want to see me try that out for the first time. But I decided to use that set again and have my set color palette with those colors. I do have other watercolors I can use. I just preferred to keep it simple and just go with the palette that I had, and the colors were enough in this palette as well for the colors that you can see in a peacock. So I was working with what I had in my palette to kind of be more concise with it as well, because it can kind of get overwhelming if you have too many colors. And so I kept with the colors I had and blended out if I needed to, but they worked out pretty well for what I needed. So here you can see that I went through and did a layer of color. So this is the first layer, and I did a very yellowy lime green on the tails and a mid blue for the body of the peacock. With watercolor, it's a different layering than I am used to when using acrylic paint, because you have to go light first and then darken it, and also if you want to leave white, you either have to completely leave that space from any water getting to it, or later on I remembered I do have masking fluid that kind of works like a wax crayon or something when, I don't know, around Easter time, when you can draw on your eggs with a wax crayon and then it leaves like circles or whatever because the dye doesn't sit on that waxy crayon on the egg. So it kind of works like that, but you can basically scrape it off and peel it off after, which you'll see later on in the video. I do use this on the final painting peacock, because after this whole, I don't know, I guess you could call it a design process, and palette process, I don't know what that's called, where you choose the colors that you're gonna use and just play around with that. But after this, I go into doing that final painting, I guess, but still inside my sketchbook, so it's smaller and more of a condensed area, so I'm not taking hours to complete it. If I were to do it on a larger scale, it would take a lot longer between drying, so doing these smaller paintings is a lot less time consuming when you just want to practice using your watercolors and making a specific thing or focusing on a specific animal or human anatomy or landscape or whatever you choose to study. That's the word for it, is an art study. If you're not familiar with artist talk. But yeah, so here is where I'm just kind of figuring out how to lay in colors, what colors I'm laying in, and just playing around because this page isn't the final page. It's like my definite sketch page. So I can be a little more free and figuring stuff out and figuring out which type of peacock I want to do, and also, not that I'm going to sell this specific painting, but when you do these studies, you want to have multiple angles and stuff, so then you as an artist can take this practice from these reference pictures and then create your own image, because copyright comes into play if you're going to eventually sell something. You're not allowed to sell some photograph that someone took and it shows up on Google. You're not allowed to replicate and sell. You can replicate for practice, but you cannot sell it. And I think that's a common misconception about Google Photos. There are websites that you can buy stock images, but you're buying the license to paint that thing. So if you're not familiar with commissioning an artist, that kind of comes into play with what you're having them paint for you. So like if it's a photo of your dog that you took, that's fine. You can just say, paint this photo of my dog. I give you permission, basically. That it's not like you're copyrighting your photo of your dog. Or a vacation spot, like if you go on vacation and take a bunch of photos and they're your own photos, which I have a bunch of those that I've saved over the years that you can pull out and paint and sell those because you personally took those pictures. You can't steal from someone else, basically. So those are my practice peacocks, and I did do a outline in the black marker just to make them pop a little bit more. And here I am putting on my tape, my painter's tape, my artist's painter's tape. I have to say that because it does look like that frog tape. But I just wanted a clean edge for this final peacock painting, and I decided to do a peacock from the side. I kind of liked that image of the draping of the feathers more than the display of them when I was doing those previous mini practice painting. And here you'll see is that bottle is full of that masking fluid. It's actually a latex based rubber, but as it dries it becomes able to peel off or scrape off. So basically you wait for it to dry and then you paint over it, and that latexy rubber makes a seal basically over that part of the paper. So all of that is going to be white, even though right now I painted over it and it has yellow on it. It's going to dry and come right up once I scrape it off, which you'll see a little bit later. And here once again I do that first layer, laying in very, very watery light layer first. And I do still have the issue of not wanting to wait for my watercolors to dry, especially on this step where you have to make them a little bit more watery, so it does take a long time. And I prefer not to use like one of those heat gun air dryer, like they look like a hair dryer, just because I don't want things to drip, and I just feel like I can wait even though I don't want to. And this green, I'm laying in greens because I plan to make a tree foresty landscape behind this peacock. So this definitely, the background layer is extremely watery, and it will take a little bit to dry, and you can see even some of the green, because I didn't wait on the actual peacock, it kind of drips through a little bit. So that's what I still have to learn about watercolor, is just to get up and walk away and come back to it. But these little paintings like this, it's a lot easier to wait before the next step, because it doesn't take as long as a larger painting, which is what I was saying before about if this were a full-size page, I would have to wait a lot longer before I moved on to the next layer. Sometimes you can still put in your darks before it's completely dry, but it can also bleed in to where you don't want it, and then you have to either use a paper towel or just a brush to soak up the color, and then you'll have to eventually lay whatever color in that spot again, because it'll only be a very dull shade of the color, not quite white, but light yellow if you're using that color. So here you can see I finally removed that rubbery latex masking fluid, and now those spots are where I put it, so I'm able to bring in that yellow of the feathers, and then after that yellow dries I can go in with the other colors of the feathers that are the bluish green, so that those can stand out and not be muddied by the underneath color. To warn you, I will be popping in and out of the rest of this video with commentary, but I will put music on so you can just continue to watch the process. now I'm darkening things, laying in more features that you see with the peacock and their feather colorings. So now here is where I put in some brown lines just to give your imagination more insight into seeing that these are actually trees. And so I look at each little blob of green that I've done, and I kind of put in where I think it looks the best for these tall trees that are behind this peacock. And I also follow up with adding a little more green to make the foreground look more like there's bushes around the peacock and also more leaves on the trees. And next is where I go in with some watercolor pencils that I remembered I have, and I add in more texture and more lines to make this peacock stand out a little bit more. And these work so that they're dry when you go onto your page, but then you can add water and blend them out a little bit more. If you are using textured watercolor paper, that texture doesn't fully go away, but it can help you with certain images just because it adds that texture to it, so you can get a little more of a rough effect wherever you place it. And it also depends on how lightly you're putting it on versus if you're trying to make it a very dark pencil. So here's where I'm going back over where I went in with those colored pencils, and it blends out to fill in but also still has that defining line feature to make the peacock stand out. And then I go in with my fine line marker to even make it stand out more in the foreground versus the background. And this is the final reveal, taking that tape off. I did rip the page again a little bit, so I may need to try a different tape on actual commissioned projects, but I'll leave you with the satisfaction of this tape leaving those crisp lines. And I hope you enjoyed watching me paint some peacocks with watercolor. If you do enjoy art videos like this, please subscribe to my channel. I do a lot of art videos of various kinds. And please leave a like on this video so other people can find it here on YouTube. And I will see you next week in the next video. Thank you for watching.